All right. Hello, everyone. All of you are just coming in. Welcome. Thank you all for being here today. My name is Brittany Higginbotham, and I'm with the Institute for Public Relations. We're so happy you're joining us for this IPR webinar with NFT Now on a communicator's guide to NFTs, Web3, and all things digital media with our speaker, Matt Medved. And a big shout out to Sam Stark with our IPR Digital Media Research Center. She has connected us with NFT Now, and we're very grateful to have them leading this webinar today. Before we begin, I have a few reminders. This webinar will be recorded and available for playback within 24 hours on our YouTube and website. We are very encouraging of all sorts of resources, comments, questions in the chat and Q&A box. We will moderate a Q&A at the end of the webinar. And lastly, if you have any tech issues, please feel free to message me or any of the IPR staff members on the call today. Now, I'd love to introduce Matt Medved. He is the co-founder, CEO, and editor-in-chief of NFT Now, an award-winning Web3 digital media platform for NFT coverage and curation. He's been ranked as one of the top 10 most influential figures in NFT space. And as an early adopter of Web3, as an early adopter of Web3, he's very experienced at bridging the worlds of music, culture, and technology. Now, I could go on, but I will instead pass it over to Matt to kick off our webinar today.
Thank you, Brittany. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here with you. Really excited to dig in today. I think that NFT Now, for those who aren't familiar, is we're the leading Web3 digital media publication devoted to NFT coverage and curation. Our mission is to empower the creators of culture and to help bring this technology from niche to mainstream. Why, you might ask? It's because we really fundamentally believe that this technology is going to change how creators and their communities create and share value together across every different discipline. And I know that may sound like a lofty statement, but we're going to break down exactly why. So I know that this space can be really confusing. I first got into the crypto space back in 2013 with Bitcoin and the like, and I had to go through the crypto learning curve then. I still had to go through the NFT learning curve in 2020. And for many of you, you may be going through both at once. And so I just want you to know that there are no dumb questions here. I'm going to be running through this, but I'll keep an eye on that chat there. I see some of you introducing yourselves, which is great. And if feel free to send me some feedback there. If there's something that you don't understand, or if there's something that you're like, yeah, we get this, we already know, let me know. But we're going to start very high level. We're going to break down a lot of the important concepts, and we will have time for questions, direct questions and Q&A at the end as well. So don't worry if you have any questions about how this could apply for you, anything that's specific to your business or your area. We're happy to address them. So the document that I'm going to use here is our NFT marketing Bible that we prepared for brands and the like who are looking to enter the space. It's a very extensive document. I'm going to gloss through some things. I may skip some things here because of the limitations of time, but I think it'll be a helpful guide as we go through. And there's also some updated examples that we can dive into. So let's get into it. There's a lot to talk about, and I'm excited to do it. So let's go. This is just the introduction. I already said who we are. Why don't we break it down, start from the top? What is an NFT? Because it's this term that, kind of popped up and a lot of people weren't familiar with before, 2020, 2021. So an NFT is a non-fungible token. What does that mean? Well, the example I like to give is, there's a difference between fungibility and non-fungibility. Fungibility means things are interchangeable. So let's take the example of this. If we were going to get lunch and you needed to borrow $1 from me, I wouldn't take out my wallet and be like, which one do you want, right? I would just hand you $1, because ultimately it doesn't matter which dollar I give you. They're all the same in terms of value, right? They're interchangeable. That's because the US dollar is fungible. So is the Japanese yen, so are Canadian dollars, so is pretty much every currency that we use on this earth, and most cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin is fungible, Ethereum is fungible. So, you think about these things, they're just interchangeable. NFTs, on the other hand, non-fungible tokens, are different because no two are the same. These are unique assets. The example I like to give is if I came to a party with a Basquiat painting and you came to the party with a Warhol painting, just from looking at those two paintings, we wouldn't necessarily know what their values are, right? We wouldn't know how they stack against each other, because there's all these factors at play, right? They're two unique pieces of work. There's history, there's cultural relevance, there's the narrative, the provenance, there's the critical perspective on the time in their work. There's also sentimental value and fandom. A Basquiat may be worth more to me just because I'm a big Basquiat fan, even if technically that Warhol would sell for more on the market. NFTs have a similar value proposition in terms of determining their value. So an NFT is the digital equivalent of this. It can be a piece of digital art. It could be a song. It could be a poem, a baseball card, even a ticket. So many different things. Think of it as a digital collectible that lives on the blockchain. And unlike art in your home or trading cards and it's trackable, it's immutable, which means it can't be destroyed, it can't be faked, it can't be tampered. And what's really cool is it's also programmable. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So essentially, it's the digital equivalent of these things, a digital piece of media whose ownership can be tracked. Why is this important? Why does this matter? Well, the first thing is digital ownership. NFTs have now enabled digital ownership in a way that wasn't possible before. For example, digital artists can now build collector bases. Back in the day, a digital artist, it wasn't a really easy career path. Most of them were stuck doing client work, and maybe they would sell a couple prints of their work for pennies, like peanuts, But now digital artists are selling at Christie's. Digital artists are selling at Sotheby's. Digital artists are commanding real markets because of this provable digital ownership. It has added this scarcity level to digital media that didn't exist before. So now, instead of a photo or an image or a piece of art could be sent all over the place, but when we look at the blockchain, this immutable ledger of transactions, we can see exactly who owns it, and no one can fake it, no one can tamper it, no one can alter that. So now digital artists are building collector bases. They're pursuing careers based on their own creative vision instead of client work. We're going to go into a lot of different real world examples. Another big thing is smart contracts. Remember when I said that NFTs are programmable? Smart contracts actually enable NFT creators to share in the value of their creation long after the primary sale. What does that mean? Well, one of the things that's really exciting and empowering about the NFT space is that, on many of the platforms, it's industry standard for creators to receive a secondary sales royalty in perpetuity. So for example, on Super Rare, where one-of-one art pieces are sold, digital art pieces, that secondary sales royalty is 10%. And what it means is gone are the days, where this is respected. Gone are the days of a starving artist, selling their art for cheap and then seeing it sell for millions later and not getting a cut of that, not getting a piece of that, which happens very often in the traditional art world. Now that artist will always see that a percentage of that, and amazingly, they're not reliant on inefficient bureaucratic entities to do so. I think that there's no that's something that's really exciting, is that this all happens automatically on the blockchain via smart contracts. Again, this is for platforms that respect this, and so there's a whole royalty. And as you can imagine, there's a whole debate around this because a lot of people want to come into the space and get rid of that royalty, and creators and artists really want to defend it, understandably. And so there's right now, it's one of the most hot button topics in the space. We'll also get into how the creator royalty can actually support a brand and changes how the nature of brand building in Web3. But we'll get down there. Trackable. This is really critical. This is really key. Because NFTs are trackable in the blockchain, creators know exactly who's holding their creations, and they can continue to engage and reward them. You can take what's called a snapshot and suddenly understand who's holding your NFTs. This can be really powerful because if you think about it, data is a really powerful and valuable commodity, especially even in Web 2. People pay, companies are literally based their entire economic existences and business models off collecting data about people's customers, right? So imagine if in one fell swoop, you could reach all of your customers and not be at the mercy of an algorithm or advertisements and the like. There's an example of this that I like to give with musicians, where I spoke to a musician named Blau, who's a kind of leader in music NFTs. And when he was explaining NFTs to me back in the early days, he told me, he was like, look, Matt, I know he's like, if I have a show in Mexico City, I know that I have tens of thousands of fans in Mexico City. Spotify tells me that I get this many streams per month, but I can't reach them. I don't have that data. Spotify has that. They don't share it with me. What's amazing is all of his fans who hold a music NFT of his, he could take a snapshot of that, send them, an NFT that acts as a backstage pass or something that is redeemable for free merchandise, something to engage loyalty and reward that. He has that direct line with them, and he's not at the mercy of all these centralized platforms. We're going to get a little bit more into that. And also, this is a new tech frontier. Just like the dot-com explosion of the 90s, many of the companies that will define the decades to come will come from this field. Many of the companies are going to fail too. What we like to say is, Gary Vee likes to say 99% of NFTs are going to go to zero. He's probably not wrong. But just like so many of the original tech companies from the dot-com boom didn't make it, the ones that did changed the face of the internet. All right, let's get to the next slide. Cool. So why does this matter for marketers, brands, and talent? Here's a tweet that I made that I think kind of helps with that. Web 2. Web 2 is a likes and comments economy where you built audience as a means to an end to then monetize it indirectly as a middleman for brands. This is the Web 2 media model, the ad-supported model where you build audience, you get people to come to you through social, through search, all that, and then you sell advertisements against that attention. It's also the influencer model on Web 2 platforms, on social media platforms like Instagram, or TikTok. You build an audience through your content. You're giving the content for free. You're not getting paid for your content largely. You're getting a likes and comments economy. But when you build that audience, you can then monetize that as a middleman for brands. And that's why you have all the influencers doing brand partnerships. What's actually exciting about Web3 and what's game-changing about Web3 is that it's an actual cryptocurrency economy. Here, you can build community as an end in itself. And you can monetize by sharing directly in the value being created. How does that work? Let's dive into it. So I just went over this example. The difference between Web 2 and Web 3 is the difference between audience and community. What's that difference? Web 2 is about building audience. What's the difference? Audience refers to the customer segment that is aware that you exist. They passively follow you. They know you exist. You cross their feed. Maybe if you do something cool, they might click it. But ultimately, they don't really have a stake in you, a really strong sentiment there. Web3 is about building community, and community refers to the customer segment that is actively engaged and cheering for you to succeed. In Web3, community wants to see you win. And in Web3, they're actually incentivized to actually do that because there's ownership. Whether you hold an NFT from someone, whether you own tokens from that organization or entity, you can actually share in that value. Not only do they want to see you win, when you win, they win. And then ambassadors are members of that community who are like your highest, most loyal brand customers, the people who are empowered to spread the word. And what's amazing is that you can turn fans into ambassadors through this powerful concept of digital ownership. So one thing that's really important as you think about launching an NFT, there's different rules to the game. Success outside Web3 does not always dictate success in Web3. So what are some of those things? I've broken out a few of them here. One of them is fair partnerships with creators. The NFT community is very sensitive about artists receiving their fair due. Because let's be real, for the longest time, artists have been getting the short end of the stick, right? And so they used to have little or no leverage in their client work. Now digital artists and creators are establishing new standards for compensation and recognition. Here's a tweet from Illustrator, who's a leading collector and builder in the space. If you're coming to NFTs without empowering artists, 50% plus share, squeezing money as a middleman because of your network, already rich and still greedy or ignoring the value of community, you are the antithesis of our ethos. And I'm not going to say the next part, but you get the idea. So that's a very strong statement, obviously, but it has its grounding in this truth. There is a norm around having equal splits in billings. Many NFT, and it's not always a hard and fast rule. In order to receive a warm reception, you want to make sure that it's very clear you're not exploiting artists. So many NFT artists will accept a lower percentage when it makes sense to, for example, working with A-list talent who can elevate their brand or their career. We have some examples coming up on that. The best practices are usually between 20 to 50% and equal billing if it's an art thing. If you're a brand and you're collaborating with an artist on here, it's actually in your interest to make sure people know what the artist is. Because not only does it show that you get it, like, hey, they deserve recognition, they're not behind the scenes anymore. But it also lends you credibility, because then people get to engage with that content knowing who it came from. And many of these artists have incredible community ties. People will trust what you're doing more if it comes from someone they believe in. Another way to show goodwill and to share goodwill is to donate a percentage of sales to charity if you're doing an NFT sale, especially if it shouldn't feel token, it should feel relevant, meaningful to the mission. So, that's an important thing there too. Let's talk about community, because community is like the biggest thing to wrap your head around as the difference into like why things succeed and why things fail in Web3. So we got all these different segments of community, these different buckets, if you will. We have creators. They could be visual artists, photographers, musicians, content creators, etc. You have collectors and influencers. So right now, we have to remember that NFTs are still very nascent. It's still very small market penetration. We're in the early innings. So what you have is, it's still on a macro scale, it's a relatively small number of people who are very, very active in the space all the time. Some of these NFT collectors or influencers can actually wield a lot of power in Web3. Some of them became really wealthy due to their investments in cryptocurrency. They sometimes call them crypto whales. And they want to actually keep their assets in the system, because it gets a little complicated when you take things out, taxable events and all that. What's interesting is that NFTs have now also offered some of these collectors an avenue for building their status and identity. We've even seen collectors sign with talent agencies to monetize the brands they're building. There's a collector named 0xB1 who signed with CAA. And influential collectors and builders and commentators can actually move and make markets. So an influencer tweeting about a project can actually impact that price. It's best practices to always disclose payments and the like, but it's kind of still the Wild West out there to some degree. A lot of influencers don't follow that. The other thing that's interesting is that influencers often have access to insider information. They call it alpha, that they receive through relationships, private group chats, etc. Gaining influencer support on drops in an organic and credible way can actually be a big difference maker. If you're thinking about launching an NFT or the like, you probably want to partner with someone who has respect and credibility in the space. An example of this is when Adidas came into Web3. When Adidas launched their Web3 product, they worked with 2 big projects and 1 big influencer. That was Bored Ape Yacht Club. You may have heard about that one. That's probably like the biggest one that's gotten all the headlines. Punk's Comic, which was another big and successful project in the space. And then they worked with an influencer named G Money, who at that point was anonymous. He used like his CryptoPunk as his face, but now he's come out and has kind of what they call doxed himself. But his credibility, G Money, for example, is a very credible influencer who does not put his name on many projects. So when people saw the combination of Bored Ape, Punk's Comic, and G Money, they said, oh, look, Adidas is doing it right. And Adidas had an incredibly successful drop. That's why I'm talking about influence. I think it's very important to keep them in mind. And just like I mentioned, many of these influencers are actually pseudonymous. They may be anonymous. They may want to protect their identities. This is actually a norm in the Web3 space. So something to always be respectful of. Here's a couple, let's talk about communities and dive into a bit more. So I'm sure many of you have heard about PFPs, right? Like profile pictures. These are the ones that got a lot of attention, especially in 2021 during the bull run. There's a project called CryptoPunks that was the OG project there. We have a lot of deep dives on this on our site if you want to get into it, but CryptoPunks essentially paved the way for the rise of PFPs. They were originally given away for free. It was an experiment. They were not made to make money. And as time went on, they're from 2017. As time went on, people recognized that they had established, they're like a piece of internet history. They were like the first to set this. People would make them their profile pictures and avatars. This is something you're going to see a lot of, digital identity. What's really interesting about these communities is that digital identity is not just an abstract concept. We've always had digital identity from the days of like AOL Instant Messenger and MySpace and Facebook and all of that. But for the first time, you can actually own your digital identity, and your digital identity can also signal certain things about you, these different communities. So Cool Cat's another one of those. So these PFP projects have been formed around these kind of community-centric roadmaps, strategies around digital identities, and marketers, communications professionals can actually leverage these communities by joining and credibly engaging with their members. In this case, marketing no longer has to be a sunk cost. Investing in an NFT to enter the space can actually be an effective way to market a brand and allow a buyer to participate in that investment's upside as well. We're going to get into that a bit with the CryptoPunk and what Visa did. Here's an example. There's probably been no more successful brand to enter the space from the media perspective, from the legacy media world, than Time. Time launched timepieces. They did upwards, I wanted to say, I forget the exact number offhand, but it was between, I think, $7 and $11 million in revenue. I'm going to double check that to make sure that's right. But they far and away led the digital media publishing space in terms of revenue from NFTs. And so how did they do that? They didn't just, it was, more than 10 million in profit from NFTs with their Timepieces project. So how did they do that? They didn't just show up one day and be like, we're Time, like, respect us, that's what we do. They made a lot of really smart moves. And their president, Keith Grossman, was behind a lot of those. They did a partnership with Cool Cats, for example, which is a PFP project, like I mentioned, is the one you see there, that built a lot of goodwill among the crypto native community and credibility. They did a collaboration. Cool Cats was excited because they got to align with a esteemed legendary brand like Time. And Time benefited from it because they got that Web3 native cred. People were like, oh, cool, you're entering this the right way. You're actually engaging with us. You actually know what's real and what's not. Like, you're not here to just have a cash grab. You're here to be a part of this. They did a free drop, a collaborative drop to Cool Cats members, and then they did a meme competition. Oh, so just want to plant the seed there because that's really, really critical. So you might be thinking like, all right, but like, where is the NFT community? Like, where are these people, right? Twitter and Discord are the two most important platforms in the NFT space. Twitter is where news breaks. It's where conversations take place. Twitter Spaces is like the town square of the NFT space in Web3. There are regular shows. NFT Now does regular shows. Influencers do regular shows. People talk in spaces, and they talk about different projects to raise awareness. You know, if you're thinking about launching an NFT project, you better be thinking about Twitter Spaces as a means for distribution. Discord is that's that top of funnel. Discord is that bottom of funnel where community building and engagement take place. Discord is round zero for activating and mobilizing your community. You'll see a lot of these projects, like when Time decided to launch Timepieces, their Web3 community, they launched a Discord. If you go to NFT Now on Twitter right now, you'll see we have our Discord link in our bio because it's really critical to get people down there, because it's a way to reach our most loyal fans directly. Now, how should you be thinking about entering the NFT space and NFT sales? Well, one of the biggest misconceptions is to treat it like a normal product. What do I mean by that? If you think about it from a normal sales perspective, a sale tends to be the end of the process. It's like, okay, all of this preliminary courtment, engagement, et cetera, we made the sale. Great, on to the next. Doesn't quite work like that in the Web3 space. In the Web3 space, an NFT sale is a beginning. It's not an end. Why is that? So one thing I want to make really clear is the difference between coming into the NFT space to create and share value together versus extracting value. When an NFT project does its primary sale, that's the beginning of a long road ahead for its creators and community. The standard for determining value is actually derived from what happens after the sale. The most successful projects clearly communicate their strategies and roadmaps with their collectors. Now, the NFT space has become very wary of what we call cash grabs. And those are NFT drops that are more about extracting value from the space than creating it. Community feels really strongly about those, and they won't hesitate to call people out publicly. Web3 requires a different mindset than Web2. The community can often see through the marketing speak, through the token inclusions, the profiteering. It's a special sensitivity. You got to meet the communities in their native environments. Twitter House, Twitter Spaces, Clubhouse, Discord. Tweeting your interests can be powerful. Having skin in the game is pivotal to long-term success in the NFT space. In long story short, you need to prove that you're here to stay. You need to prove that you're here to contribute to the space and create value versus just take value. So another thing I talked about was the power of this technology to create a long and sustained and lasting engagement with your holders. How do you continue to reward your holders? Consistency, sustainability, communication, and value. Brands looking to enter the space should be focused on continuing to create value long after the primary sale has ended. The prospect of future rewards are what incentivize collectors to hold on to their NFTs. And it motivates those who don't hold the NFT to buy them on the secondary market. This increases the demand and the price, and those incentives will actually energize and engage the community. What could those rewards be? They could be bonus loyalty NFTs, what we call airdrops. Those are free NFTs dropped in. Access to token-gated chats and channels, maybe on Discord. And access to exclusive opportunities, experiences, meet and greets, merchandise. This is where brands can really shine, because it's about identifying the people who really want to buy the ticket, take the ride, go on that journey with you, and rewarding them with really exclusive experiences. Think about it as almost like the fan club meets the loyalty rewards program. So many of the most successful NFT projects actually make more money off their secondary sales royalties than their primary sale. Now, this is interesting because right now, as I said, there's a debate raging in the NFT space about the royalty debate. So while a lot of companies relied on the secondary sales royalties for their business model in the early days of Web3 and NFTs, now I think I would encourage companies to explore a much more holistic one where secondary sales royalties play a role, but aren't necessarily the fundamental thing. But what does this mean? The NFT community has a long memory. So if you do one cash grab drop, you may get away with it once, but you won't get away with it twice. And if you believe, like we do, that this space is the future, digital ownership isn't going anywhere, you remember that your reputation is incredibly valuable and can be destroyed overnight. And everything is reported publicly on the blockchain. Everyone's got the receipts when it comes to NFTs. They can literally see on the blockchain how much money you received from the sale, where it went, how you distributed it. Everything's public. Everything's transparent, which is really exciting and cool for accountability, but also means that brands need to act responsibly. So always keep this with a long-term mindset. Now, especially when we talk about creating value from a brand perspective, URL and IRL are really critical. Because the NFT community came together largely when the world was shut down due to COVID, the URL space was thriving. Everybody knows each other from their PFPs. Everybody's like in their Discords, Twitter. And it's funny because only starting 2021 into 2022 did people really start getting out back IRL as the world back opened up again. There are still a lot of people. I know people who host podcasts together and are on Twitter Spaces daily and have never met in person. This community is digitally native, and it's important to keep that in mind when you think about engaging it. That said, IRL is an incredibly important opportunity for brands and communicators entering the space because you have a prime opportunity to actually facilitate this transition, event activations, partnerships, bring in elements of digital culture. It hits different in brick and mortar reality. A good example of that is a project called Doodles. Doodles was a very successful PFP project. And what they did at South by Southwest was like the talk of the space last year, because what they did is this incredible, if you Google Doodles SSXW, if you Google it, you'll see like the images of their installation. It blew everyone away. It was incredibly well done. But what was cool about it was that it was actually open to the public. So other people it wasn't just like only for Doodles holders, it actually made it open to the public, got a lot of people excited, interested in the space, learn about everything, because just the actual imagery of it, the art of it is really compelling. At the same time, they rewarded their holders with special experiences. So you not owning a doodle, if there's a lot of people want to go, you probably had to wait in line. Okay, that's normal at South by. We've all waited in line at South by. But what's cool is, if you had a doodle, obviously you have the pass, you could skip the line, but it's even more than that. It's cool. Once you get in there, there are all these experiential things that if you had a doodle could actually be personalized. So there was a coffee bar where if you had this pass that was connected to your doodle, you could actually scan the machine and it would create in the foam of the coffee like an image of your specific doodle. There were video screens that had all these interesting visual activations, and they could actually do things. The doodle that was used in this narrative storytelling was all your doodle. And they partnered with Shopify on a merchandise station that if you were a doodle holder, you got free merch. So they did a great job of bridging URL and IRL, bringing a digital community into the IRL, and doing it in a way that gave the holders exclusive value, but was also not exclusionary to the public. A lot of people walked into that installation, had no idea what doodles were, or even that it was an NFT, but they left feeling a certain way, usually pretty good about that brand. All right, let's get into some of the juicy stuff. So some cautionary tales, right? Now, this marketing Bible focuses a little more on individuals. I also want to talk about some brands. So we're not going to spend too much time on these, but Eminem, Ellen DeGeneres, Lil Jon, all examples of celebrities who entered the NFT space the wrong way. Why is that? It's about all of them were perceived as doing cash grabs, potentially. Eminem in particular. He, as you can see, the Ness Rapp is the big artist in the space. He said, remember when Eminem just dropped an NFT with 0 credit to any artist and just dipped? Good times, right? People remember that. It's a long memory. I want to get into the brand example, so we're not going to go too much on these. But when Ellen DeGeneres went in here, she had a backlash because it seemed as though she was discrediting the validity of these artists by auctioning off a stick figure cat, that she drew. It seemed really low effort. It seemed disrespectful. This was actually a charitable NFT, but she got backlash over. She got a ton of backlash over it because she disrespected the artists. And then Lil Jon, also entered the wrong way. Low effort cash grab. So before we get into it, let's also talk about some brands who have faced some backlash. Most recently, Porsche, the luxury auto brand, experienced backlash in the NFT space. Why did they get that backlash? Well, one thing to remember is that the crypto market is boom and bust. It goes in cycles. It's when things are bull, it's exciting. When things are bear, it's a little bit, it's going the other way. We're in the middle of a bear market right now. So in a bear market, people are a lot more discerning as to what they spend, how they spend their money. Liquidity, as we call it, the amount of transactions and sales that are going on a given day is lower than during a bull. Porsche didn't read the room right. They sought to launch, and what's unfortunate is that Porsche actually had a really cool project idea. It wasn't a low effort cash grab. They worked with artists. They made those artists clear. They supported those artists. They talked about the roadmap, all these things. But where they went wrong is they went wrong when it came to the pricing and the supply size. Their drop was based on the Porsche 911, the 911 car. And they decided that they wanted to make their NFT, they wanted to charge 0.911 ETH, and they wanted to do that with a supply size of 7,500. So what was wrong with that? Why was that off base? Well, all right, it's Porsche, right? Porsche is a luxury brand. It's understandable to have a little bit more of a premium price point, right? But 0.911 ETH is 1,500, and it was on $1,500 at the time. Okay, sure. Why is that an issue? Because 1,500 times 7,500, they were seeking to raise $11.25 million from the sale. And this is a brand, this is a very respected Web2 brand, but they don't have a track record in Web3. Remember, we talked about communities and how it's important to show the long-term building blocks. Remember how we said it's important, a lot of the most successful projects have actually started off very low and then have built their way through showing value to their holders. A lot of people balked at that because 11.25 million, that's more sales than all of on any given day than the entirety of NFTs being sold. So they misread the market, they misread the optics of it, and they got bashed from every angle as a cash grab. And they only ended up selling around, at one point it was under 2,000 of those NFTs, and they eventually had to cut the supply. Now they're working to make good. They recognize that they made a misstep. They cut the supply to those 2,500 or whatever it was after they closed it, and they're working on serving that community. But they got a lot of negative press, a lot of backlash, and it's unfortunate because the Web3 space is actually quite welcoming if you show respect. None of us want to see a Porsche fail. We want to see a Porsche succeed because it's good for the space. It has a chilling effect on all brands when a brand like Porsche enters and missteps, right? So, but as you can see, they what they miscalculated was the fact that they were seeking to the NFT community, it seemed like they were seeking to extract value, $11.25 million of value, before they had really proven, hey, like we can create value. You know, it's different for now let's say that it may have been different if Porsche had already launched a very successful NFT project and had a buzzing community, and it showed that they could bring everyone value and all that. Then maybe they would have been forgiven for launching something like that. I still think the supply size was just too high for this market. You know, we would advise like either make the price much lower, like 0.0911, you know, $150, or make the supply size smaller. If you want to have a really premium price point, have it be a very small, you know, exclusive group. I don't think they would have received the same backlash if they had done one of those two routes, but with a combination of the two was not the right optics. Let's talk about some good examples, right? We don't want to keep it all negative. So again, this deck is more focused on creators. I want to gloss through it quickly, but I want to talk about brands. I think that'll be most helpful and most interesting for y'all. So just some good examples. Paris Hilton is actually cited as a case study for how to credibly and successfully enter the space as a celebrity. She created dedicated social media accounts. There are some lessons here can be applied to brands. So she created dedicated social media accounts devoted to NFTs. She began collecting pieces from a wide variety of artists, particularly female artists, and for more than a month before she announced her own drop. So she started by collecting artists. She started by supporting the space. She started by showing, I'm here to create value. In fact, I remember being in clubhouse rooms with Paris in the early days where she'd be on stage and people would go to talk to her and be like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts? And instead of pretending that she was an expert about it, she'd be like, hey, look, to be honest, I'm learning. Like, I'm learning in public. Like, she didn't say it like that, but she was learning in public. And she was like, I'm just here to listen. Like, I'm finding this really interesting. I believe in this is really exciting for artists. And I'm here to listen. People love that because it was credible. It was real. You don't have to pretend you're an expert. We're all like, it's too early for any of us to really be experts on this. Like, it's like, this is a new thing. And so people really love that. And then critically, she worked with a respected crypto native NFT artist, Blake Catherine, equal splits in billings. And she also collaborated with Illustrator, who I showed that tweet before, a nonprofit and a gallery to empower women. So you see, like, there are some lessons here that can be extrapolated to a brand as well. Start by showing value. Start by showing you have skin in the game. Mike Tyson's a good example as well. We actually worked with him, which was really exciting. And we kind of helped connect the dots with him on with a rising artist named Corey Van Loo. He was a rising artist. Now he's pretty much a star. He sold Sotheby's, Christie's, all the above now. But when we made this, he was a rising star. We did some content around it. And it ended up, Mike Tyson's drop actually ended up being the most successful NFT drop to date for an athlete on OpenSea. And part of that was because we engaged the community. We helped guide him with buying NFTs. He joined a community. He bought a cool cat, made the cool cat his avatar. People loved it. The cool cats went nuts, right? And he genuinely wanted to learn more. And he also didn't front as I'm an expert. He learned in public. Gary is another good example. Here are some brands. I want to talk about these. And then there are a couple other examples that are more recent that I also want to talk about. So Twitter leaned into engagement and secondary sales in a big way. They actually gave away their NFTs for free. They recognized that this wasn't about showing revenue. It wasn't about like seeing NFTs as just like a revenue driver or like, you know, a profit margin. They were like, this is about engaging our users, getting this into their hands, like, you know, kind of creating that surprise and delight that we talk about in marketing, right? So they gave away their NFTs for free. And what they did was they had a clever way. They were on Twitter, of course, asking for prompts, and people who responded really in a clever way, they would list them essentially. They would send them the NFTs. Some of these, they made no money on the primary sales. So this wasn't about, you know, driving revenue, but they got a certain percent of secondary sales. And because they launched it really credibly, some of these secondary sales were significant. One was as much as 68 ETH, which at the time was, I think, that was when ETH was 3 to 4K. So it was well over 100K, you know? So they would have gotten, you know, a percentage of that. Another thing that's really interesting, Arizona Iced Tea, they bought a Bored Ape. They made it their brand's Twitter avatar. The Bored Ape community loved it. They went wild, right? So because the Bored Ape NFTs, what's interesting is because Bored Ape Yacht Club, which is this very, very popular, very successful NFT project, because they give their NFT owners commercial rights, Arizona, they own that at Ape. They can now actually use it commercially. They actually have commercial rights to it, which is a new and exciting thing in this IP space. So they have a wide purview. Visa in August purchased a CryptoPunk. Remember the one I talked about that kicked it all off with PFPs back in 2017? Those were kind of the OGs. Honestly, it's like if you're deep in the space, all the like OG collectors, they all have CryptoPunks because it's like that's that like most pure, like this is what started it, like this. It's like the heads, it's the OGs know it. If you're real ones know, you know what I mean? So when Visa purchased a CryptoPunk and hailed it as part of its collection of historic commerce artifacts, Web3 went nuts. They loved it. Great brand positioning for Visa. And it led to a rise in the project floor. Visa then partnered with an NFT artist named Micah Johnson to do a creator program aimed at empowering artists. All strong moves. Now, those are some early examples. Who are some brands who have done a great job recently? I think one of the most interesting trends we've seen is brands have also found success by launching NFTs without calling them NFTs. Why is that? Well, like with any new technology, people fear what they don't understand. And so in response, just like when Bitcoin launched in 2013, the rise of NFTs spawned a lot of skepticism, a lot of criticism, a lot of people unsure about what is this space, right? And so at that time too, Ethereum, the blockchain where most NFTs are minted, was not very energy efficient. That has changed since last year. In September, Ethereum went through what's called the merge and reduced its carbon footprint and its energy expenditure by 99% by going from what's called proof of work to proof of stake. Don't worry if that all sounds like a foreign language to you. I totally understand. But what's important to note is that the argument that NFTs are bad for the environment when it comes to Ethereum lost a lot of steam and is no longer as true as it was before. And that's a good thing, because I think that was also contributing to a lot of the backlash that people were seeing to the idea of NFTs, because they would see these headlines about that. And now that Ethereum is a more green friendly chain, we have more artists and more brands more readily interested in joining. But there's still that stigma sometimes around the term NFT. So who's a brand that was able to successfully launch their NFTs without using the word NFT? Reddit comes to mind. So what happened there? In July of 2022, Reddit launched a new project called Collectible Avatars. And if any of you have used Reddit, you know that digital identity is really important on that platform, right? Everyone's got their avatars. They've been doing that for years, for decades, honestly. And what they did was they created this viability where you were able to all of these artists and creators that were already known in the Reddit community launched their collector avatar projects. And overnight, Reddit had created 3 million Vault crypto wallets on the platform. At one point, they surpassed even OpenSea, which is the leading NFT marketplace, in the number of active wallets. It was a huge success from a community that has honestly been very skeptical of NFTs in the past. How did they do that? Well, they first off, I think they called them digital collectible avatars. They didn't call them NFTs. That was really interesting. Also, they did it in a way that was medium native. They showed this community the value proposition of owning your digital identity within a framework that they already understood, because everyone was using avatars on Reddit to begin with. All of a sudden, they had the opportunity to own their avatar and, hey, maybe sell it and make some money if they needed. No one's gonna be mad at that, right? And so they took what was this abstract concept, NFTs, that was easy to dislike or hate or the like, and they made it make sense to their users. I think it was one of the, if not the most significant mass onboarding experience that Web3 has seen. Who's another brand that's done a great job? Starbucks. Starbucks launched their what they call Starbucks Odyssey. And what they're doing is they extended their Starbucks reward program and empowered people who were using that to go one level deeper. So rather than asking, for example, their customers to sign up for something new or take some plunge or sign up for a crypto wallet, that's all really confusing, right? Most people just want to get coffee and like, like maybe get a free latte here or there. But, they already had a successful rewards program with Starbucks Rewards. So they just took it to the next level. They implemented something called Starbucks Odyssey, these journeys, these activities, these interactive games that you could play, take challenges, deepen your knowledge of coffee, and also like the Starbucks brand. And if you completed these journeys, these odysseys, you'd be rewarded with what was a journey stamp. People love collecting stamps. People love checking boxes, collecting these things. Those are NFTs. Did they make it really clear these are NFTs? No, they're just like digital collectibles, right? And what was cool was nobody needed to set up a crypto wallet. No crypto was required. They made this a really easy onboard ramp to the mainstream market. There's a built-in marketplace. Everything was self-contained. And it's been a big success. They've seen incredible traction there. And that's really exciting because we love to see, as people who really believe in the space, a big brand like Starbucks do it the right way. Going to really quickly whip through these last slides so we can have time for questions. But you've probably heard of this thing called the metaverse. I could do a whole nother hour or more just on the metaverse, right? So what is the metaverse? The metaverse refers to the overlapping web of virtual worlds on the blockchain. It's VR, AR, extended reality, but with the prospect of digital ownership. So virtual land, real estate, galleries, these can all things would be NFTs. There are also places to display NFTs or where musicians can hold concerts and reach millions of fans. I would also include in the metaverse virtual platforms that are not on the blockchain, like Fortnite and Roblox. We all have heard just how much Gen Z can't get enough of those spaces. And one thing I would say is, we're big believers that we are all here part of the last generations to grow up without digital ownership from day one. So what does that mean? It means that future generations to come are going to grow up owning things physically and owning things digitally. They're not going to have the same hangups as we are. They're not going to be like, how do I hang it on my wall? They're not going to be like, I can right-click save it. They're going to grow up owning things digitally and physically. They're going to accept and appreciate them both for their own unique strengths and appeals. We're already seeing this with Gen Z and Roblox and Fortnite and all of that. People are trading skins. It's just not all on the blockchain. So if we believe digital ownership is the future, this whole digital frontier that we're building is kind of collectively referred to as the metaverse. These are a few of metaverse virtual worlds: Decentraland, CryptoVoxel, Somnium Space, Sandbox. There's another called OnCyber. Don't need to worry too much about these. Is getting a level deeper, but some ones to check out if you're interested. I still think mainstream adoption for metaverse is very far away. I think it's going to start with augmented reality and extended reality versus everyone wearing headsets all the time. But as you can see, the digital world is going to get increasingly popular and important. That's why big brands are coming in. Sotheby's Metaverse, they built a virtual gallery in Decentraland with their NFT offerings. Coca-Cola entered in Decentraland. They did a can top party for International Friendship Day. They auctioned off a loot box on OpenSea that went for more than $575,000 with a friendship box NFT, a Coca-Cola bubble jacket, these interesting ways to bring people together in a virtual environment and still maintain trueness to the brand. Cool. So one thing I'll leave you with before we jump into questions, I know we have just a little over, it's 12 minutes left. Everything we just ran through, digital art, collectibles, these are just scratching the surface for the potential use cases for NFTs. NFTs have the power to revolutionize all of these different areas, from obviously those areas, but also the music industry, more equitable models for creators, TV, film, literary NFTs. I'm a big believer that poets and poetry is going to experience, perhaps on a lesser degree and more niche, the same renaissance that we had with digital art. Well, all of a sudden, it's already happening where poets can create collectors. There are people buying poetry NFTs. It's its own art form. And there are also more mundane use cases, like being able to prove that you own a deed to a house, a title to your car. All of these things that are, destructible paper documents now that probably should live in some immutable ledger where they can't be tampered with or faked or forged or all that. So I just want to leave you with that. We're going to see massive customer segments enter in the space in many ways. Bollywood, anime, sports, we're seeing that all happen now. It's incredibly exciting. So that's us here to help you navigate the space. NFT Now. We do some consultancy for kind of a handpicked a collection of clients and brands. So feel free to take down that email if that's of interest. But I'm here to answer your questions. There's a glossary. There's a whole lot of other things here. But why don't we open it up?
Okay, great. Yes, we have some questions in the chat. I'll just go ahead and start with one of them. So do you see games and virtual worlds as the precursor to the metaverse?
Yes, in many ways, yes. So it's interesting because like we think about the concept of the metaverse, it's like I kind of define it as like the virtual, it's like being inside the internet, right? And it's like communities within the internet. So you could argue, for example, that like the metaverse already exists and is just becoming like more immersive in the sense like Twitter's part of it, Instagram's part of it, all that. I think that when we think about metaverse in terms of virtual worlds, I do think that gaming is definitely an important precursor. I'm a big believer. I've said before that I think NFT, blockchain-based gaming, is going to be a huge driver for the next bull market, the bull run. Why is that? Because similar to the example with Reddit, you have a lot of people. You have these massive communities that are super engaged, and there's a use case that makes sense for them. Similar to Reddit, there are a lot of gamers who are very resistant to NFTs and the idea of NFTs. The big gaming companies don't have much of a financial incentive to embrace the technology because they prefer their walled gardens where they dictate the exchange. There's less risk in that way. They can control all of the exchange and profit off that. You look at like the skins markets in Fortnite. But that will change as things grow out from there. And what's interesting is it takes multiple years to build a AAA game. And so a lot of these like powerful gaming companies are hard at work right now. They're still in development. And so what we're going to see is some of these start to manifest over the next year or so. And I think 2024 is going to be a huge year for blockchain gaming. The project I mentioned, Bored Ape Yacht Club, they're a really interesting case study because they went from being a successful PFP project to launching what's called Other Side, which is their metaverse world and an immersive game. They just brought on the, I don't want to get the title wrong, but very, very high level executive at Activision, at Blizzard Activision, who came over to Yuga Labs, which is their parent company, to run that. So they're taking it very, very seriously. It was the president and COO of Activision Blizzard has left to go build out this world. So yes. And what's interesting is that Yuga Labs Bored Apes have also indicated that other communities and other projects are going to be welcome to integrate with the world they're building. So it's not a walled garden in the same way as some of these more Web2 native gamer things are. They want the cool cats to come in. They want the World of Women project. Like they want to bring others in. And that's really exciting. There's also the answer is yes. I do think gaming will be an incredible like driver for that. And then there are some interesting builders in the space, like a guy named Punk6529, who's championing the idea of an open metaverse, which is rather than anyone owning this metaverse, it's collectively owned by the community, and there are no, impediments to building it. And so, as you see in like Facebook now, Meta is highly prioritizing this. They're getting a lot of flack and heat for the amount that they're spending on it, but Zuckerberg sees where this is going and he wants a piece of it. He wants not only a piece of it, he wants to control, to be in control in the same way that Facebook and its companies have been in control in Web2. And I think that many in the community would like to see things, would like to see alternatives to that as well as we go forward. So long-winded answer to a great question. Yes, I do think gaming is going to play an incredible role in the precursor to the metaverse, and to normalizing the communities coming together in these virtual environments.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have another from Victoria. She says, let's say I have the art already from a past collaboration and I own the rights. I would like to give it away for free. Would the artist be receiving a percentage for the resale, and how much would it cost to produce in Web3 approximately?
Sorry, you cut out to just the end there. If you could just repeat it
Oh, sure.
for me. I couldn't
So,
hear it here.
okay, let me make sure. Okay. Let's say I have the art already from a past collaboration and
Yeah,
I own the rights.
yeah.
But I would like to give it away for free. Would the artist be receiving a percentage for the resale, and how much would it cost to produce in Web3 approximately?
That's a great question. Really great question. So here's the thing. If you own all the rights, like you're the sole rights owner, all that, then you're fine to mint that on the blockchain, give it away for free. And then you get to, like, depending on the platform that you use, you get to program what that creator royalty looks like. So if you, let's say if it were on super rare, which is like the high end, like one of one fine art, then it would be set at 10%. But in most cases now, like a lot of people are using product platforms like Manifold and the like to mint on their own terms. So you could actually set what that creator royalty looks like. And if you wanted to, you could have it split between two wallets. Now, if you own all the rights to that, there's no legal impediment to you minting that, giving it away for free, and having those secondary royalties go to you. That said, if that artist feels slighted and tweets about it or like shares themselves, you could soon find backlash in the community because you didn't really do right by that artist, you know? So something that I think both artists, creators, and brands need to weigh. Just because you're maybe legally in the right, will that carry in the court of public opinion? In this case, what I would probably recommend doing is reaching out to the artist and saying, hey, heads up, I wanted to release this as an NFT. I'm planning to do this for free. I'd love to get your blessing on this, or I'd love to, just make you aware of this, and just let you know. And it really kind of depends on the terms of your original arrangement. I'm sure that the terms of your original arrangement probably didn't encompass secondary sales royalties, because generally those don't really exist in the United States. So I think it would be the right move to probably like create a conversation around that, and maybe it'd be fair to split those, and you could do that. You could, depending on the platform, if it's Manifold or something you mint on your own, you could do that yourself. You could have it go to split between two wallet addresses, or you could if it's a platform that doesn't allow that, once you receive it, you could manually send it to them. In terms of how much it costs, it really depends on the piece of media and also the platform. There's something called gas, which is a whole other thing to get into, but there are gas fees, gas costs associated with doing anything on the blockchain. It kind of powers the whole ecosystem. And so when a lot of people are using the network, it's more expensive to do things than when people aren't. During the bull run, when everything was crazy, as you can imagine, gas got pretty expensive. These days, it's pretty reasonable. It's pretty cheap. So I think you'd probably be able to mint one NFT piece of art. I think for probably less than $50 these days, if it's just kind of like a normal, like a standard size file and the like. Does depend on really does depend on what you're using. Some platforms are more efficient for that than others. But if it's on Ethereum, which is kind of the leading, like the network, the blockchain with the network effect, it would be I can't imagine it being more than that these days. Sometimes it's like $15, $20 or something like that. What's interesting though is that if you think about minting hundreds of thousands of NFTs or millions of NFTs, you start to get to that adds up, right? There's a scale, and that's why there are some other blockchains. I didn't want to get into too much depth and granularity today, but there are what's called layer 2 blockchains, which are scaling solutions built on Ethereum. There's one called Polygon that a lot of people use. Polygon, it costs a fraction of a cent to mint an NFT. And then there are some layer 2 blockchains like Tezos and Solana and others that are also cheaper than Ethereum currently. But they also come with their own like pros and cons. So it really does depend on the price. But I would just say, if you're thinking about minting something as an NFT, that's a collaborative work, even if you don't have the legal like duty to share or inform them, it's sometimes best to err on the side of doing so, just to make sure that like you don't get accused of being, of getting a backlash from the community or taking advantage of a creator. General rule.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I think that is all the questions that we have time for
Great.
today. But I just wanted to say thank you so much, Matt, for being here with us today and sharing all of this information. If anyone, I highly recommend you check out NFT Now. There's a ton of resources to dive deeper into this space. But thank you again, Matt, for spending your afternoon here with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was great. And yeah, we're you can follow along at NFT Now on all social platforms. And we also have that there's also info@nftnow.com for inquiries. I'm at Matt Medved on all social platforms. And feel free to reach out if you have a question, if you have I'd encourage you to go in our Discord. Actually, if you use Discord, we're more likely to see that than just a random Twitter DM or the like. So if you go down in if you go to our Twitter bio and at NFT Now, you'll see the Discord link, and we have our community manager and Discord moderators down there. So they'll be happy to help route any questions or requests. But if you go to nftnow.com, you'll see we have a ton of guides and resources to help navigate the space. So we hope this was helpful.
Yes, thank you. And everyone, this recording is available within 24 hours on our website and YouTube channel. So, all right, have a good night.
Thank you.